last segment of the Tater Barksdale podcast for today. Here we have the Maryland Justice Project. And today we have Tom, we have
Monica Cooper,
and we have Marion. We still here. We talking about programs that are promoting goodwill and health in our city here in Baltimore City. We got a lot of projects. We got a lot of programs that's in the city that's working to help to clean up our communities. And today, I want these guys to tell you about the Maryland Justice Project and what they have to offer and where they are and what they're doing with their work.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, I will start. My name's Monica Cooper. I'm the executive director of the Maryland Justice Project. And I do apologize, audience, because I have a peppermint in my mouth.
You good? This all damn.
But I did not have breakfast. We've been around since 2013, and the organization was founded on a premise that women and girls have been what associate of mine, Kim Haven, called an afterthought, particularly in corrections and particularly being a part of the narrative with the whole reentry process. That women are, when we looked at Maryland and we looked at the amount of persons who are incarcerated, women are the smallest of that bunch, and they actually receive less resources. So we decided that we need to concentrate on the efforts of women and girls and reentry, and just helping women and girls in general to have their voices heard, to make sure that people realize that we need to have these systems and these things in place for women and girls. So that's mainly our population that we deal with. We have lots of programming that we're coming up with. And before I continue, I want to make sure that you know who Han is. Han is here representing the Weisberg Foundation, which is a foundation that is helping. Yeah, give her a hand. Thank you guys. She's very shy, but give her a hand. But thanks to the Weisberg and the OSI Institute, Open Society Institute, we are able to do the work that we're doing. And we're able to build capacity, and we're able to take these programs that we have and be a more efficient and more organized operation, because there are a lot of nonprofits in Baltimore. But in order to be a nonprofit that's effective, we all are passionate. Believe me, I am very emotional about what I do. I will cry because I've walked that life. I've had my parents who were addicted to drugs. I've lived this life, and it hasn't been an easy road, and it's painful. It is painful to relive those experiences, and it is painful to see children. It is painful to see women. It's painful to see human beings in the human condition that we find ourselves in. So I tend to get emotional about it because this is my passion. This is what I'm going to do until God calls me home. That's right. But I ain't going to get emotional.
Let me ask you a question, Monica. What do you think for reentry, right? When women come home from incarceration, what do you think is that number one resource?
The number one resource for women that's returning home is housing.
Bro, that's so crazy because that's what I believe it is for men too. Yeah. I believe that because you know, inside the house you're gonna have all of the basic needs. You get a house, you may put some food in it, you're able to take a bath, you're able to wash yourself, get some sleep, feel secure.
Yeah. But I will say this, and I'm not a male basher, but one of the reasons why we choose women is because the majority of the women are primary caretakers. When that woman got incarcerated, she was the one taking care of the children.
Absolutely.
When she come home, her number one priority is I need to get my babies back. And in order for me to get my babies back, I have to prove to the Department of Social Services, I have to prove to parole and probation, and whomever else, even my mother, even my grandmother, that I've changed. I'm no longer going to use drugs. I'm no longer going to do these things. I made that mistake. So the number one priority is getting their babies. And that's one of the reasons why we have to continue to focus on women. It's because they can help stop and prevent this cycle. It is the woman who can keep her children in her home and out of penal systems. So we concentrate on women, and again, it's not enough on men.
That's what's being
We
honest,
definitely want men to be housed and everything, but it is the women that I believe that can turn this whole thing around. We had an incident that happened at Mondawmin Mall where we saw a mother in the midst of a riot during the Freddie Gray uprising. This mother loved her child enough to go to him and pop him upside his head and do what mothers do. Because she realized that as a mother, your father can give you a guidance and say, look, boy, this is what you do when you're trying to date a girl. This is how you be a man. This is how you chop this wood. He can show his male children that and be there for. But it is the mother and her maternal instinct that will come after her cub. The mother will do whatever she has to do to protect her cub. And that woman on that particular day demonstrated the importance of women in this city and in this state. So we definitely are fighting to save women and to actually invest in women, because I personally believe that it is the woman who will break this cycle of violence, that will break this cycle of incarceration. It's the woman that can do that.
So how you feel about intense like mental health services and like intense like trauma-informed kids services like in prisons? Because like I don't believe that they got like really intense trauma-informed and like programs in prison. I really believe that we have to definitely reform like what they're doing in prisons.
Yes, sir.
Because it's like they said, they should always say traditionally, oh, it's a warehousing system. It's even more than a warehousing system now. It's actually, from what I've seen, women prisons and men's prisons. You got people who go in there so stressed out, so traumatized, that they become substance abusers when they get to prison. And some of them are not substance abusers, but they get to prison, they might have just tried it in the street, smoking weed and doing whatever they're doing, but maybe tried some Molly or maybe tried an E-pill or some ecstasy. But I see guys like that go to prison, and from the guy's standpoint, and they start using harder drugs. Like, what do you think about that kind of stuff? Do you think we need more intense services in prison? And should people be like giving those services before they come home from jail? And should they be mandatory?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I have a women's pre-release pamphlet right here, and this is one of those pieces of legislation, and I don't even have the number in my head because we just got the bill number. But in Annapolis, Maryland, the bill hearing is February 21st. It's going to be at 12 noon. And we, along with ACLU, Out for Justice, Life After Release, and PG County, Kiana Johnson out there, we and our partners, we're going to be there because the Maryland Justice Project, for the past 5 years, we started the conversation in 2013. And the first thing that I thought is we'll never get this done because you need money. Because when you start talking about capital projects, when you start talking about putting more programming in prisons, the first thing that prison officials, lawmakers going to say, well, where are you going to get the money from? In Maryland, we have a budget, and the governor approves that budget. And that budget is going to say you spend $2 here, $3 there, 50 cents here, and that budget cannot be changed. It has to be approved. In order for us to end our sessions with the gavel, you have to have a budget that is approved by everybody, and he gets the say-so on it. So in my mind, I thought, we'll never be able to get the money. So I said, all right, we'll come up with what we call a brick project. And for each dollar that a person gives, we're going to give you a brick, because you're helping to build this institution. Well, the brick project never came, that was because I'm always thinking about raising money. If we're going to sell dinners, if we're going to have, whatever it is, I'm thinking, because capital is what we need to not throw at this problem, but take the directly impacted. And we can show you. I stayed in that joint for more than a decade. I've had that lived experience. So I can tell you what the therapeutic community looks like behind the wall. I can tell you how successful those programs were and can be. But like I said, it takes money. So in my mind, in 2013, when we started talking about the Women's Pre-Release Center, because they shut it down. There's 0 pre-release units in Maryland for women, which don't even make sense. Off the top of my head, it's a Title IX issue. But I kept thinking about all kinds of ways. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. I said, well, dang, can we go at them with Title IX? Meaning that whatever you provide for boys, you have to provide for girls.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that didn't seem like it was flying anywhere. But lo and behold, we have this legislation now that's being introduced by Senator Mary Washington in the 43rd District and a new Senator Crutchfield in Annapolis. So the bill is going to be heard on the 21st. But getting back to what you said is that in the Maryland Correctional Institution for Women, in the past 6 months, there's been 3 suicides.
Wow.
3 suicides. They just put in a Baltimore Sun that a 19-year-old who was on a shelf, that's what we call lockup. That's the term we call lockup. She was on lock. She was asking for mental health. Banging on the door. I need to go to mental health. The officer obviously ignored her. She some kind of way got a lighter from somebody. Set her mattress on fire. The whole cell inflamed. She was injured and several correctional officers injured. That is a crime. Anytime a person is willing to set a mattress on fire in a cell that you are locked in and have no way out, that is a serious plea for help.
Yeah.
So do they need mental health in there?
Yeah.
Most definitely. And do the women? And do the women need mental health? Yes. You cannot send women home without having a halfway house.
Listen.
Because you're not getting the services that you need in that period.
It's worse
so
than
you
that.
definitely need them before you come home. The people you in there killing yourself,
Yeah.
you know that if they in there doing it while they there, as they exit, they in worse condition they was when they came.
Monica, I sympathize with you because I was serving 10 years in parole. I was in Patuxent, and I was responsible for feeding lockup.
Yeah.
And I was feeding the mental health team in Patuxent.
I can't imagine.
The thing that you saying, right? The guy says to me, I'm feeding him. He said, you got any extra peaches? I said, oh, after I feed everybody, I'm gonna give you some peaches. He said, no, you gonna give me one of them other peaches. But he, I ain't giving you no peaches. I came back the next day. In his cell, he had newspapers stacked. It was regular newspapers, like the dude on the corner. Like, I'll get all these newspapers for you. Right? So when I get back to the tier, the next day, all the newspapers unraveled at 6 feet high. He's sitting on the back of the cell on top of the toilet. So now the shit about 5 or 6 feet, like he done raveled them, whereas though they gonna all stack up high. And he's sitting on top of the toilet. So he say to me, he know that the police leaves off the tier and go stand out there on his post. So I say to him, he said, you gonna give me some peaches today? I said, oh, if there's some extra peaches, I'm gonna give you the peaches, right? So he said, no, you gonna give me them peaches, or I'm gonna set this cell on fire. I said, well, you can set the cell on fire. You know, I'm younger at the time, I'm only like 23 years. I said, well, you set the cell on fire, you ain't do nothing to set the cell on fire. He said, nah. He said, the police ain't gonna open that gate while no fire, unless they call the code. The rest of it. He said, you gonna die from smoke inhalation. You gonna die in here with me. That's what he telling me, right? So I said, all right, I'm gonna give you some pieces. So we go back and forth. He don't wind up liking the match, but I give him like the extra bread that was on there, some more juice. I'm giving it to him, right?
Hey, Boss, what you want, an apple? I got some chips too.
But that ain't the kicker of the story.
Oh, man.
I came back the next day and said to the officer, where Mr. Mike at? They said, Mr. Mike mandatoried out. He went home this morning before I went up there and fed lunch. Mr. Mike ain't getting no mental health services. Mr. Mike was just about to blow me and him up with the newspaper. But that's who they sent out in the street.
With no help. Wow.
Exactly.
So this re-entry thing, all of this stuff is major because I really believe that when kids go to jail, they get traumatized. It's not normal to be in jail. Like when I was in jail, the first time I got to jail, if I wasn't like Tater Barksdale or a follower, the first time I got in city jail, I'm on lockup. Don't nobody know I'm right there. I got in a fight, so they sent me on lockup. Don't nobody know I'm on lockup. But the police come on the tier because somebody has set a fire. Now, we don't got nothing on lockup. You been on lockup, you ain't got nothing down there. You got your toothpaste, maybe a book or two, sheets, mattress. You don't got nothing. So they tell us they about to come strip us. So I'm like, what they gonna strip us if we ain't got nothing? They say, yo, they gonna come get your toothpaste, your soap, everything.
Wow.
Right? So everybody said, we bucking, we bucking, we bucking. We bucking how? To get you the first out, it's the goon squad. It's stay 6'3", feet 13s and stuff like that. So your job was when the police come to the cell, you gotta go hard.
And block.
You gotta pop the first police come to the cell, and you gotta fight them. And if you don't, you are lame and you subject to some kind of violence on the tip. So they get all the way to my cell. I'm sitting there debating. I'm looking, I got a Bible, some toothpaste, some soap. Like, I don't got nothing. I got like my t-shirts, it's hot, we don't have nothing in there. I don't fight. Right? Somebody yell, oh, there ain't going no fighting. You can't hear the rumbling of that cell. Right? I still don't say nothing. Somehow the next day a dude come to my cell and he looked at me and he left. So when they yell, they say, yo, who over there in that cell? So somebody on the Tater found out like, oh, that's Tater. What Tater? They say, he from Lafayette Projects, he said. So I heard another dude yell over, it's Tweety Bird. Is that Tater, that Shane, and Bubba and the people? Yeah, they like, yo, that's off limits. But the fact of the matter is, you got all these dudes collaborating about what they gonna do to me because I didn't buck. The rest of the tier bucked. I couldn't even believe it. Like, they just popped the police. And the next morning, when we went to showers, the two dudes next to me had black eyes, big lips. I'm saying to myself, like, bro, what was bucking for? But this is trauma. People going to jail to go traumatize.
Okay, that situation is indicative of what incarceration looks like. When you have to have individual human beings contemplating on whether or not I'm going to punch a correctional officer in the face, which is clearly against the rules, clearly wrong, and that type of mentality is one of the reasons why folks, women, men, are not able to get successfully rehabilitated. You should not have to contemplate on fighting an officer just to make sure that they don't take what little bit you have. The correctional system itself, particularly in Maryland, definitely needs to be revamped, because you had asked a question about programming and the services, and eventually the Maryland Justice Project will address our lawmakers and on behalf of all people in the penal system. It is our taxpaying dollars that should insist that you bring and send back healthy human beings, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. You can't allow people to go in there broken. Men and women who come from socioeconomic situations where they already don't have nothing. How can you take somebody from a situation where their mother used drugs, the father used drugs, the one person they do look up to is a counselor, a therapist, a PRP person, that one person, and how do you take them and allow them to go into a system where they already are messed up because of their upbringing or because of their socioeconomic situation, because of where you live. So
because of systemic racism and structural racism.
Definitely.
So we would be on the individual.
I agree.
Systems and institutions that they did.
And it's okay, because that's what it is. When you talk about women, men, in a penal system, we have yet as a society to get to the core of why we have growing institutions anyway. Why are we not being abolitionists and saying, let's shut these prisons down? And we shut them down by doing what Harn said, by recognizing that it's systemic racism that causes our federal government, our state government, and our local government to put these things in place that continually impede the progress of other human beings. It is the 13th, and Michelle Alexander said, it is convict leasing, and it continues to take another form in another way. It's like back in the 1800s, if you were a vagrant, you did not have a home, you were considered homeless, they sent you to prison and you went back to work on the potato fields, you went back to work in the cotton fields. And it's almost like today, like Karen York over at JOTF, they had done a report. Job Opportunities Task Force had done a report, and the report says penalizing the poor. The poor continuously get punished. You are punished for being poor.
I know I'm behind the camera, but I wanted to say this because I'm listening to everybody. You see what's happening though. You're closing down schools, but then you're building juvenile jails on Greenmount Street. So you have enough money, the state, to build a jail to house juveniles, but we can't even get an AC unit at my daughter's school at Poly. So that they don't have to leave a half a day. You know what I'm saying? So you see what's being done. The money is going into housing criminals versus educating students. So at the end of the day,
because
it's just crazy.
The prison system, it gets cheap goods and cheap labor.
Yeah, cheap labor.
You know, people don't realize, like right here in the state of Maryland, when we had to cut, they was doing license tags, they had meat cutting shops, all that
They
kind of
package
stuff.
Victoria's Secrets good. You know, people don't know
so
the Victoria's Secrets.
They make furniture and desks and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really big market. You know what I'm saying? And we just gotta
they're armed, but I imagine because you have a lot of organizations throughout this country, a lot of nonprofit organizations. One of the things that I like to tap into, and I like to tell people who are fiscally responsible for other people is to allow those organizations to build true leadership. If you really want to help a person, you don't need, because one of the problems we have with huge nonprofits is that most of them have not had that experience, and they are top heavy, making $100,000, $150,000 to tell individuals like me that we feel like this is what you do. So now they've even turned the nonprofit into a corporate type of thing. So even a nonprofit does not have the same appeal and effect that it does. So to the listening audience, please allow nonprofits to be the leaders. Trust that a formerly incarcerated woman can lead an organization and can force change. Fannie Lou Hamer did it, and a whole bunch of other folks did it. Fannie Lou Hamer changed the way that we vote in this country. She, in 1965, they passed the Voting Rights Act, and it was because of people like Fannie Lou Hamer. Because of this systemic racism that we see, we don't want nonprofits to be a part of that. And to continue to allow gentrification of communities. They take over these big, beautiful buildings, and they put their nonprofits in there, and they're not actually allowing people the opportunity to lead. And that's one of the dynamics in this nonprofit work has to shift a little bit.
And I always say that. I was just telling Murray in our last session on the podcast, I was like, any nonprofit organization working in any community, you need to have a couple of your employees from that community.
That's right.
How you gonna come serve us and you don't have nobody look like me?
Not just even but like in leadership.
Yeah, in leadership.
On the board.
Yes,
you know?
to inform decisions, because the person in the neighborhood, the people in the neighborhood know what they need. You can't come in and tell me what I need. I know what I need. That's all from my story. So I thank y'all for coming.
Yeah. Before we go, I do want to give one more shout out to the Weisberg Foundation, and really, definitely give them a round.
Tune in next week to the Tater Barksdale podcast. This was episode 1. Change